Have you ever promised yourself you'd finally speak English fluently, then found 100 excuses not to start? You tell yourself you're busy. You tell yourself you'll try tomorrow. But deep down, the real problem isn't time. It's fear. Fear of mistakes. Fear of sounding foolish. Fear of failing before you even begin. This is the story of what happens when you stop listening to fear and start forcing yourself to grow, no matter how uncomfortable it feels. When I first started learning English, I thought it was all about memorizing words and grammar. But I was wrong. Fluency isn't built from textbooks. It's built from moments of courage. Moments when you speak even though your voice shakes. Moments when you keep going, even when no one believes you can. So today, I want to take you on a journey, my journey, of how I forced myself to improve and what I discovered about confidence, consistency, and self-belief along the way. Have you ever asked yourself why it's so hard to stay consistent? Why you start with excitement, but somewhere between your intention and your action, the energy disappears? That question haunted me for years. I used to wake up every morning with a quiet promise. Today, I'll practice my English. And then, by night, I'd break that promise without meaning to. I wasn't lazy, I was afraid. Afraid of sounding silly, afraid of not improving fast enough, afraid that others were already better than me. You see, I come from a place where English isn't spoken often. In my town, people used it only for exams, not for life. But deep inside, I wanted to speak it, fluently, confidently, like those people in YouTube interviews who never pause to search for words. I wanted to feel the language, not just study it. But every time I tried, something held me back. I remember one day in particular. It was hot outside, the kind of heat that makes the air heavy and lazy. I sat with my English book open in front of me, repeating phrases like a machine. How are you? I'm fine, thank you. My voice was flat, my mind elsewhere. After 10 minutes, I shut the book. What's the point? I said to myself. I'll never sound natural. Maybe English just isn't for me. That night, I lay in bed thinking about my dreams, about working abroad, studying in another country, meeting people from different cultures. All of those dreams had one thing in common. They needed English. And yet I was doing everything except what I needed to do. That night, something shifted. It wasn't a big dramatic moment. No thunder, no music, just a quiet decision inside me. I'm tired of being tired of myself. I picked up a small notebook and wrote one sentence. Tomorrow I will start, and I will not stop. The next morning, I forced myself to speak for 15 minutes, out loud, about anything. My breakfast, the weather, my dreams. I sounded terrible. My accent was heavy, my grammar confused. But I finished the 15 minutes, and that small victory felt huge. Over the next few days, I kept going. 15 minutes became 20, 20 became 30. I talked to myself while walking, washing dishes, waiting for the bus. I wasn't waiting for confidence anymore. I was building it. Then something unexpected happened. After about 2 weeks, I noticed I was starting to think in English. Simple thoughts like, I should call my friend, or I need to buy milk. It was small, but it felt like a door opening in my mind. That's when I realized fluency isn't a gift. It's a decision repeated every single day, even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. I began to read more. Stories, quotes, anything. One day I came across a line from Atomic Habits by James Clear. It said, "You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems." That hit me like lightning. I had goals, speak English fluently, think in English, dream in English, but no system. So I built one. Mornings became for speaking practice, afternoons for reading and writing, evenings for listening, podcasts, movies, interviews. I didn't care if I understood everything. I just wanted to absorb the rhythm of English. Still, there were days when it felt pointless. There were days I hated my voice, days I wanted to quit. One night, after stumbling through a YouTube comment conversation with someone from another country, I felt embarrassed by my grammar. My sentences were broken, clumsy. I deleted the comment. I stared at my screen for a long time, then I whispered, "If I stop now, I'll never forgive myself." So I wrote again. This time I didn't care about mistakes, I just wrote from the heart. And that small act, refusing to let shame silence me, changed everything. I started to join online English groups. The first time I spoke, my voice trembled. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. But then someone smiled and said, "Your English is good." It wasn't perfect, not even close, but those words gave me fuel. That night I understood something deeper. Improvement doesn't start with talent. It starts with courage. Courage to speak when your voice shakes. Courage to try when you don't believe in yourself. Courage to stay when progress feels invisible. I began to record myself speaking. Every week I'd listen to the old recordings, and that's when I realized how much I'd grown. The mistakes I once made without noticing now sounded foreign to me. That was real progress, on quiet, invisible, but powerful. I stopped comparing myself to others. I stopped wishing to sound like a native speaker. Instead, I wanted to sound like me, confident, clear, alive. It was around that time I discovered something magical. One day, while reading The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, I came across an idea that seemed unrelated to English but changed everything: presence. The author said that most of us aren't truly present. We live in our heads, in memories or expectations. But fluency, I realized, happens only in the present moment. When you speak a new language, you can't hide behind perfection. You have to be here, now, feeling each word as it comes. So I stopped memorizing. I started living the language. When I saw the sun, I'd whisper, "The sky looks golden today." When it rained, I'd say softly, "The world feels peaceful." I was no longer translating. I was experiencing. And slowly, English stopped being a subject I was studying. It became a lens through which I saw life. But not everyone understood. Some friends laughed when I spoke English around them. "Why are you acting foreign?" they said. "Just be normal." I smiled, but inside it hurt. That night I wrote in my notebook, "They laugh now, but one day they'll ask how I did it." And I kept going. I started to realize something powerful. Discipline is just self-love disguised as hard work. When I forced myself to practice, I wasn't punishing myself. I was protecting my dream. Every morning when I wanted to quit, I'd ask myself, "What kind of person do you want to be? The one who says, 'I could have,' or the one who says, 'I did'?" And I'd practice anyway. Months passed. My confidence grew. I could hold conversations, watch interviews without subtitles, even write short reflections in English. But deep inside, I still felt something missing, that spark of true fluency where your thoughts and words flow together like water. I realized that forcing yourself isn't only about repetition, it's about reshaping your identity. So I started to tell myself a new story. Not "I'm learning English," but "I'm an English speaker who's improving every day." It sounds small, but that mindset changed everything. You act differently when you believe you are what you're becoming. I spoke with more intention. I listened more deeply. I corrected myself kindly instead of cruelly. Fluency stopped being a mountain to climb. It became a path I was already walking. One morning, while practicing in front of the mirror, I noticed something. I was smiling, not because I sounded perfect, but because I sounded free. That was the first time I felt it, not just speaking English, but being English. It wasn't about accent or grammar anymore. It was about connection. When you can express your truth, even in a language that once scared you, that's fluency. But I wasn't done yet. The real challenge was coming, using my English with the world. The real test of growth, I've learned, is not what you do when you're alone, but how you perform when the world is watching. After months of practicing in my room, it was time to step into reality. I still remember the first online meeting I joined with people from around the world. My hands were shaking on the keyboard before the meeting even started. I kept rehearsing my introduction in my head. "Hi, my name is..." and then forgetting it again. When the host finally said, "Okay, let's introduce ourselves," my heartbeat thundered in my chest. For a second, I thought about leaving the meeting. My cursor hovered over the leave button. But something deep inside whispered, "You promised yourself you wouldn't stop." So I took a deep breath and spoke. "Hi, my name is... I'm happy to be here." The words came out rough, broken, but they were mine. And then someone smiled. Another participant said, "Welcome," in a warm voice. The fear that had ruled me for so long began to loosen its grip. It was such a small moment, but I remember it like it was yesterday. Because that was the moment I understood that courage doesn't eliminate fear. It just teaches you to move through it. After that meeting, I joined more. I spoke more. And slowly, speaking English with strangers stopped feeling like walking on fire. It became like standing in sunlight. But it wasn't just about English anymore. It was about the person I was becoming, disciplined, patient, alive. There were days I failed. Of course there were. Days when I didn't practice. Days when I doubted myself. But each time I asked a new question. What would my future self want me to do today? That question saved me many times. Because when you think from the point of view of the person you want to be, you start acting like them. And soon, you become them. I noticed that my daily habits were changing. I was no longer just reading for language. I was reading for meaning. I was listening not to copy accents, but to feel emotions. I was writing not for perfection, but for honesty. I began journaling in English every night. The first few entries were awkward, full of errors, but I kept writing about my fears, my hopes, my progress. And one night, as I read my old entries, I realized something beautiful. I could now understand my own words without struggling. It felt like I was meeting a younger version of myself, one who had believed, even when it was hard. That's when I smiled and whispered, "Thank you for not giving up." The next big turning point came when I decided to record a video of myself speaking English and post it online. It sounds simple, but it terrified me. My voice, my face, my mistakes, out there for anyone to judge. But I remembered a line I once read in The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. The amateur believes he must first overcome his fear, then he can do his work. The professional knows that fear will never go away. So I hit record. I spoke for 3 minutes about how learning English had changed my confidence. I stumbled a few times, but I didn't stop. When I finished, I uploaded it, heart pounding, and waited for comments. To my surprise, people were kind. Some said, "I understand you clearly." Others wrote, "I feel inspired to practice too." And that's when I realized something powerful. When you dare to show your imperfection, you give others permission to try. From then on, my fear became fuel. I recorded more. I spoke more. I joined clubs, discussions, even helped beginners like me once were. Every time I helped someone, my own confidence deepened. One evening, while helping a friend from another country with pronunciation, he said something that made me pause. He said, "You speak naturally now. You don't even notice it." I laughed at first, but later, when I lay in bed, his words echoed in my mind. I thought back to that first day, the book, the heat, the doubt, the broken sentences. And now, here I was, not perfect, but fluent enough to express, connect, and inspire. It didn't happen overnight. It happened one small act of discipline at a time. That's what people don't tell you. Now, forcing yourself to improve isn't about aggression or punishment. It's about gentle, relentless repetition. Every "I'll try again tomorrow." Every "let me say that one more time." Every "I can do this." That's how you build fluency, not just in language, but in life. Because English, in the end, taught me more than grammar. It taught me resilience. It taught me patience. It taught me how to stay when things get uncomfortable, and that lesson applies to everything. Now, whenever someone asks me, how can I force myself to improve my English, I smile. Because the truth is, you can't force passion, but you can train discipline. You don't need to be in love with English every day. You just need to respect the process enough to show up. And eventually, something magical happens. What started as discipline becomes desire. What began as effort turns into ease. There's a moment, and you'll know it when it comes, when you're speaking and suddenly realize you're not thinking anymore. The words just flow. That moment doesn't come because you studied harder than others. It comes because you refuse to quit. And that, to me, is what fluency truly means. Not sounding like a native, but sounding like yourself, clearly, confidently, in another language. Sometimes I still make mistakes. I still search for words, but now I smile when it happens, because mistakes are the fingerprints of progress. Every error I make is a reminder that I dared to try. And that's the essence of growth, daring again and again, until one day you wake up and realize the person you've become is the person you always wanted to be. So if you're listening to this now, and you're tired, frustrated, thinking of quitting, I want to tell you this. The version of you that speaks fluently already exists inside you. You just have to meet them. And the only road that leads there is made of small daily steps. Some days you'll feel proud. Some days you'll feel lost. But if you keep walking, just keep walking, you'll get there. Because every word you speak in English is not just practice. It's a promise. a promise to your future self that you're coming for them. And one day, that future self will look back at you, smile, and say, "Thank you for forcing yourself to begin." If you've listened this far, remember, your journey doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to continue. Fluency isn't something you find. It's something you build, word by word, day by day. So the next time you feel afraid to speak, remind yourself, your future self is already fluent. They're just waiting for you to catch up. Keep going, keep speaking, keep believing. And if this story touched your heart, subscribe to English Story Avenue, where words become courage, and every story brings you closer to the voice you were born to share.